Thanks very much, Ciarán. And again, I'd like to welcome all our guests joining us today, and thank you for being here. And to Mr. Backhurst, wish you the very best in your new role. Mr. Backhurst, you mentioned in your opening statement the presence of conflicting evidence in the absence of certain personal testimonies. Can you elaborate on who you feel is required to shed light on the current issues that are facing around the evidence that has been presented to date? Who are the individuals?
Yeah, certainly. Look, clearly it would be very useful if the former Director General, when she's well enough, can come and give evidence to try and shed some light on particularly some of the verbal conversations we have no records of.
Anyone else?
I know, well, I've spoken to Jim Jennings, who's also sick, very unwell at the moment, and I know as soon as he's recovered in due course, he would be open to doing that, and I've discussed that with him.
Have you sought any legal advice in relation to affidavits to actually establish the real facts around the decision-making process and the events that subsequently led to this commercial arrangement?
I haven't as yet, but it's something we'll certainly consider. Look, I want to get to the facts of this, and we've established the facts the best we can, and we've put things in the public domain as quickly as we can. And when, if I may just pick up on the email that Mr. Lynch introduced, you know, when we discover things late in the evening, we want to bring it out into the public domain as soon as possible. We brought it here to the committee today, so apologies we didn't give it to you in advance, but some things are discovered in the work in the evening in advance of that. Certainly, Deputy, that's an avenue that I think we should pursue if we can't hear it another way.
Can I ask Mr. Lynch, was the suite of emails and documentations, were they released to prime time before they were released to this committee?
No.
You're factually...
They were sent to the committee, absolutely.
So no one else had any visibility before today's committee and that documentation pack that you have in front of you?
They were sent to this committee first and uploaded. I don't know if those two emails are missing or not.
So none of them emails appeared on prime time earlier this week?
No, I didn't watch it. I'm not aware that they did. No.
Okay. Just one clarification.
Deputy, sorry, can I just add on that? We are very rigorous about trying to make sure that we give all the information to the committee before it goes to anyone else. However, I would say also that our communications department, as you'll understand, and rightfully, has been deluged with inquiry. We also try and answer those as transparently and openly as we can, and sometimes the two things will cover different areas or at different times.
Thanks for the clarification. Mr. Backhurst, you take €250,000 a year. Should anyone else in RTE be paid more than the Director General?
I think if they're worth, if they have a worth to RTE that's worth more than I am, then I think we should consider that. I don't consider that I should always have the top salary in the organisation.
But is that a real issue in relation to top earners and the runaway train that we've seen for those who are chasing the best deals?
Look, I think I've said publicly, Deputy, that we need to keep downward pressure, and I said it in my statement today, we need to keep downward pressure on the most highly paid presenter pay, and that's what I intend to do during my tenure. But we also need to attract the very best talent, because that's what the audiences deserve.
Yeah, can I ask, to what extent did Ryan Tubridy and Noel Kelly leverage Tubridy's status as the highest profile presenter on the RTE flagship show to personally benefit from a venture that was fully facilitated and underwritten by RTE along with a commercial partner?
Sorry, you're asking me, Deputy?
Ask Mr. Lynch.
Yeah. So in terms of that, I would just say again that Noel Kelly is an extremely good negotiator. He's meticulous about detail. He represents his clients extremely well. He's very loyal to his clients, also to say, and also to put on the record that my experience of Ryan Tubridy over the 7 years I've worked in RTE is he is an utterly decent person. I just want to put that on the record.
Yes.
In terms of the negotiation and the ability to leverage that, undoubtedly Ryan Tubridy in the Late Late Show is commercially important to RTE. I'm not sure where the figure of 100 million comes from. That would seem high to me. If you look at, I'd be aware of our commercial revenues, that seems high. I'm not sure. There may be a valid methodology to that.
Can I ask you, Mr. Lynch, and it's a yes or no answer, is it plausible that both Ryan Tubridy and Mr. Noel Kelly genuinely believed that the payments were from Renault?
I can't speak for Ryan Tubridy. I think from the evidence provided yesterday, there is a strong Chinese wall there between, but again, it's conjecture because I don't know the conversations that are had between the two. But from Mr. Kelly's evidence, it certainly seems to be separate. In terms of the evidence I've produced here today, I can't see if Mr. Kelly was asked to invoice Astas in the context of it being a one-year Renault deal. I haven't seen any evidence, and Mr. Kelly may be able to produce some to Deputy Smith's point, that actually there were conversations had where it looked like Renault. I know there was no conversation. I can categorically say there was no conversation with Renault. The commercial director was never going back to them for another 6 events, and another solution had to be found. And at that moment in time, as Mr. Kelly recognises in Grant Thornton, this legal contract was underwritten by RTE, and as a result, the wheels kind of came off the bus, and then he was paid through this barter account, and a credit note was issued. Mr. Kelly knew nothing about the credit note. Mr. Tubridy knew nothing about the credit note. I can't comment on the payments. That's up to Mr. Kelly.
So is his explanation credible?
I'm not going to comment on that. That is Mr. Kelly's explanation and interpretation of events. I just don't think it would be fair to comment on it. From the evidence, I've presented the evidence that I see to the House.
Can I ask Mr. Backhurst, Mr. Tubridy and Mr. Kelly's criticism of RTE during that hearing, will it impact the possibility of repairing any relationships?
I think some RTE has laid itself open to criticism, and I'm quite thick-skinned, and I think that some of the criticism they made that I heard...
was it justified?
I think some of it was justified, yes. Some of it was justified. You know, how it's played with staff within RTE, I'm starting to get a feel for that.
Will there be consequences?
I don't want to say there'll be consequences. It's not about a punishment thing. This is about doing the right and fair thing for the future of RTE and the future of Ryan Tubridy. And, you know, I don't want to rush into that in the next hours or couple of days. I think we need to take time to get that properly done and to be fair to Mr. Tubridy. But do the right thing for RTE.
Can I ask Mr. Lynch, how credible is Ryan Tubridy's comparison of the Renault deal to a book publishing agreement?
I think it is valid to say that on-air presenters can have approved relationships or other commercial arrangements. I think that is valid. I don't know the details of the arrangement.
Does it hold up considering the circumstances of the payment to the barter account for consultancy services and the involvement of RTE?
Well, I think from the evidence I've provided, they would seem to be different things, because I would assume in the case of the BBC an invoice was sent to the BBC for services provided. I understand from Mr. Kelly's evidence, and it is a different interpretation, that his understanding was when he sent the invoice, which was different to the first invoice, the second two, that to the UK company called Astas, that in his mind he was very clear it was for Renault. That's what
Mr. Backhurst, on your investigation of we now know the fraudulent invoices, has that been reported to the Gardaí?
I would refer to my legal colleague here. I mean, one of the early questions asked was whether this was fraudulent or not, and we were given legal advice. I don't, Paula, if you want to come in on that.
Yes, I think I said before, one of the questions from the board, once the Grant Thornton report was issued to the external legal advisors, was whether this amounted to fraud or illegality, and the advice was that it did not. The money was accounted for, there was no personal gain, but it was misleading, and it ultimately led to RTE misstating the proper amounts.
Mr. Kelly states that he followed instruction by RTE and that he was instructed not to put Ryan Tubridy's name on the invoices and instead outlined that they were for consultancy fee. is there not a collusion here in operation between Noel Kelly and RTE to conceal where these payments were going? Because it has been confirmed 150,000 euros is now in Ryan Tubridy's account.
I accept what you're saying about collusion, but that doesn't necessarily mean that it amounts to a criminal offence. There was definitely a misleading or a lack of transparency, absolutely.
Thank you, Deputy Burke.